The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Why it's a padded practice today. Look, I'm not in any way denigrating NFL players. These guys are tough. And they hit like crazy during the season. It's just the way that things have changed in training camp. We're, a week into it, and finally they're going to put on the pads today. And the fans are going to be there. They were there yesterday. They're going to be there this week. And then the team heads to New York next week to have some practices against the New York Jets before the first exhibition game a week from Saturday. We'll get into that. The Dream Team. Nah, this is not the Dream Team. Team USA basketball. We can all exhale after what happened yesterday. They got South Sudan coming up on Wednesday, and I think it's going to be a lot different than when they played in what was the exhibition season. So a lot to talk about as we round out July, which is always the deadest month of the sports calendar. We still have a couple of dead weeks in August, but things are ramping up with the NFL. The Olympics have been great and drawing some incredible numbers. I saw Saturday somewhere like 30 million. Those are, good regular season NFL numbers, and very impressive at how much people are watching the Olympics. And we saw some good stuff yesterday. Collected a gold medal in swimming. We've had some, some things that have happened. Simone Biles shaking off an ankle injury to perform very well. Not that I'm a ringhead in any way. And also something that Dawn Staley said yesterday as they were doing coverage of the Team USA basketball. After it was over, they had a little time to fill, and she was with Mike Tirico. And she was on the selection committee to select the women's team. And she admitted that they now have second thoughts about not having Caitlin Clark on the team, that she's a different player now than when they made the selections. Is it going to be devastating for Team USA? No, but they missed an opportunity. They really did. They had something to capitalize on for women's sports, and we'll get to that later this hour. And also, in the next hour, this is the 38th anniversary of the decision that basically sunk the USFL. They won. They beat the NFL in court, but the damages were $1, which were trebled to $3. And the league was $160 million in debt, which was a hell of a lot of money 38 years ago, so they just folded up the tent, and the rest is history. And the role that Donald Trump played in the folding of the league, we'll get to that and a whole lot more in the next hour. Meantime, as we say, it was an exhale day for Team USA as they had the close calls leading up to this and needed something like what they got yesterday. And, Kevin Durant has come off the bench, I think, 3 times in his entire career. I saw him play as a high school senior. I'd never seen anything like this. A 6'10" guy who could handle the ball like a guard and shoot threes. And that was 2006. We're going back 18 years ago. And he has become one of the greatest players in NBA history. And as they selected the team, he was hurt, calf injury. Remember, it was the calf injury that led to the torn Achilles when he was playing with Golden State, had to miss an entire year, has made an unbelievable comeback from that. That used to be a career-ending injury. He's come back as good as he's ever been, and now he's up there in his mid-30s and still performing at a high level. And what he did yesterday and coming off the bench, oh, my God. I mean, it was a tough start for Team USA. If you watch the beginning of that game, you, like me, might have said, oh, God, here we go. This is not going to be easy. It was 10-2 against Serbia when Steve Kerr had to call timeout. He noted that when Chuck Daly was coaching the Dream Team in 1992, never called timeout. Didn't need to. They won every game like by 50 points, so he wasn't going to do that. But he called the timeout, got things back together, and here comes Kevin Durant off the bench. We don't know how rusty he's going to be. Hadn't played 5-on-5 since April, and he was spectacular. Hit his first 8 shots, 5 of them threes, finished with 23 points. LeBron, who's 39 and a half, going to be 40, playing at a level which is as good as we've ever seen, certainly in the Olympics from him and maybe in the NBA, just completely dominant. Playing in a game that was a 18, 19-point game in the final few minutes And he finished up with 21 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds, and was just an emotional leader out there. I mean, this is a guy who understands international basketball, knows how to play it, and he really gave the team a lift. So when it was over, Brian Windhorst talked to Kerr about it, about the performance of Kevin Durant, about the performance of LeBron, and some head-scratching there as Jason Tatum did not get off the bench. This with the backdrop of his teammate, Jaylen Brown, still kvetching about the fact that he's not on the team. We'll get more into that, but this was Windhorst after Team USA won easily 110-84 over Serbia.
Steve, I know you've said many times that when you coach Kevin with the Warriors, you witnessed him come back from injury and play great, but this is an extreme situation. He hadn't played 5-on-5 since April. He was walking into a bench role, which he'd almost never done in his career, into a 27,000-seat arena playing for Team USA, but still with an amazing performance.
It was incredible, but not surprising given what I've seen from Kevin in the past. I've said it before, I think he's the most skilled basketball player I've ever seen. The game just comes so easily for him, and a long layoff like that doesn't seem to bother him, and he was brilliant tonight. Obviously just shifted the game as soon as he got on the floor.
LeBron has had such great leadership qualities throughout his career. He's been saying and doing so many things through the exhibition season, but he came out and played a totally complete game for you tonight in a situation when you really needed it against a high quality opponent.
Yeah, LeBron had another level that he was going to get to following the 5 friendly games that we played, and Spo and Ty Lue both told me they've coached him before. They said when the stakes are at their highest, he's at his best, and he was really good in the friendlies, but there's a different level of energy, and at 39 for him to still be doing this is amazing. But there are times where he kind of conserves his energy and uses it at the right time, and we needed that tonight.
So this is one of the things that happens when you're the coach of Team USA. You guys play your best game of the whole summer to this point, but you didn't get to use Jason Tatum, who's obviously one of the best players in the league. Obviously, that's one of the hard things to do in your role.
Yeah, it's tough, but Jason handled it really well. I talked to him today before the game that it may play out this way, just with Kevin coming back and the lineups that I wanted to get to. But that'll change. Jason's going to play. Every game's going to be different based on matchups. He's a total pro. He's first team All-NBA 3 years in a row. I felt like an idiot not playing him, but in a 40-minute game, you can't play more than 10. You really can't. And so I think he's an amazing guy, great player, and handled it beautifully, and he'll be back out there next game.
And the way the world works today, that quote, "I felt like an idiot not playing him," that's the only takeaway from that. You got to put it into context. And yes, it's a 40-minute game. He's got all-stars across the board. I mean, the second unit that comes in is better than any of the first units in other countries. Now, they play more together, so that might be an advantage. They're more used to international basketball, but the level of talent is unbelievable. So he's not able to get Jason Tatum into the game. I would think he would even start him. I don't know if you can say to Kevin Durant after what he did yesterday, coming off the bench with hitting his first 8 shots, if it's better for him to have a bench role. I don't know. I mean, at this point in his career, hasn't he earned starting, but maybe he can convince him to do that, and maybe he puts Jason Tatum in the starting lineup. The other issue about this is not just that Tatum didn't play yesterday, but his teammate Jaylen Brown is not on the team. And if you missed this on Friday, this was Grant Hill, who was on the Dan Patrick Show, and he asked Hill is the head of USA Basketball. Jerry Colangelo used to be in this role, but he's the president of the whole thing, and he helps to choose the players, the coaching staff, etc. And so when Hill was on, Patrick asked him, what was the reason that Jaylen Brown was not put on the team?
We went to training camp, and we didn't have KD. KD was out, Kevin Durant, sort of coming back from a calf injury. And then Jason Tatum was late for arrival. He didn't show up the first 2 or 3 days. So, we ended up having to sort of play Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo together. And we didn't know if that would work. I think going into camp, we thought, let's have 3 centers much like in '96 when we had Akeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, and Shaquille O'Neal. And we'll rotate. All three of them are different. They provide different things. And so we'll have sort of a three-headed monster at the center position. But what we found, because we didn't have the numbers those first few days, was that Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis can really play well together on both ends of the floor. And at times might be our best defensive lineup. So we kind of stumbled upon something, and we learned something about our group during during those 4 days in Vegas. And so when we pivoted off of Kawhi Leonard, we said, okay, we got a little bit of a log jam now at the 4 position. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, now Bam Adebayo. All these guys can play the 4, and we envisioned them playing the 4. And so, okay, let's not bring another guy who might play that 3-4 position in. Let's bring in someone now who can really give us great defense at the point of attack. That was also a priority for putting this team together, being able to pick up full court, guard and pressure the point guards of opposing teams. And Jrue Holiday might be the best in the world at doing this. But having some injuries that we had during camp, well, what happens if Jrue gets hurt? And so Derek White might be the second best in the world at point of attack defense. So that was sort of the thought process, but we really learned about our team those days in Vegas and discovered something with Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis on the court together that we really weren't thinking about prior to our arrival in Vegas.
Did you call Jaylen Brown to tell him or explain this to him?
I spoke to his agent, and I spoke to his agent. We I don't know if that was before or after things went out on Twitter, but yeah, I mean, I think this idea that there's a conspiracy theory. I always love a good conspiracy theory, but it was really truly a basketball decision, and these are tough decisions, But having gone through this with the FIBA competition, you want to find the right balance and the right pieces on the court that we needed. And not to say that he wouldn't have been good. There's a lot of guys. You can go on a list of guys who are very capable and very, very, very qualified. But, for where we were, it was the right decision. And Derek White, I think, will help us as we pursue goal.
Now, I don't know if Jaylen Brown listened to that whole thing, but the words conspiracy theory got out. And he put out a tweet either yesterday or the day before where he said, Grant Hill calling me a conspiracy theorist is disappointing. I've been a VP since I was 21 years old, and I have a great understanding. I'm not sure what he means by VP. Vice president, whatever, but he's not happy with the words conspiracy theory coming out of Grant Hill's mouth. Not accused. It seemed to me he wasn't accusing Jaylen Brown of being a conspiracy theorist, but this is what came out. And then you remember that after the announcement of the team, Brown indicated that because he wasn't a Nike guy, that's why they left him off. And he put out on social media, he made it clear, he said at the ESPY Awards on July 11th, he declined to elaborate, but at the Summer League on July 15th, when asked directly if the shoe company had something to do with him being left off the roster, he said, I do for sure, adding there will be more stuff to come with that, but as of now, I'm not going to comment on it. Well, I guess his comment is if there's a conspiracy theory, he doesn't buy it, or is he putting out a conspiracy theory? I don't think Grant Hill accused him of that, but it's kind of a mess right now. And now you got two guys who are in a difficult position, Jaylen Brown not being on the team and Jason Tatum being on the bench. I think Kerr is smart enough to know that he's got to rectify this quickly. And if he doesn't start Jason Tatum against South Sudan on Wednesday, he's going to bring him off the bench quickly. But look, I mean, how can you argue with keeping him on the bench so that Kevin Durant can come out and do his thing and hit his first 8 shots? I don't know how you can argue against that. And so far we haven't heard anything from Jason Tatum on that. So we'll stand by and see what happens in the next couple of days. One other thing from the Grant Hill conversation, you remember before they started exhibition play, they brought in a team of players, some of them, I guess, ex-NBAers and some of them college guys, and one of them Cooper Flagg was yet to play in college. He's going to be a freshman at Duke, and he was terrific. And it got to the point where some said, gee, Cooper Flagg, why not have him on the team? Hill was asked, might that have been possible?
No. He had a good day, and he had some good moments. But yeah, I mean, he's going to have a great college season, I hope. But I know he'll have a great NBA year or NBA season. But no, I mean, he had a good day. He had a really good day, and that was documented on social media. People saw the clips. But he still has some growth to do, and I think he would acknowledge that as well. But, he may be a guy that's in consideration in 4 years. We'll have to wait and see.
But how close is he to being great?
I think he is great. I mean, I think he is great. He'll be a great college player. I think his game may even resonate and translate better on the NBA stage. He's young. He's 17, so he's still learning. Sometimes when you're young, you have no fear. You don't even know you're supposed to be scared. But he's got all the tools. He's got the mental makeup too. He has, some nasty in him. He's not afraid.
But why does it translate more to the NBA, you think, than 1 year at Duke?
Well, I'm just saying the college game is a little bit different. The college game is, if anything, the college game might be a little bit more like the international game now. It's definitely more ball movement. You can zone. So the space and the pace and the freedom and all that happens in the NBA game may be better suited for him. But I still expect him to have a great season and lead Duke to a national championship.
Yeah, of course. The old Dookie, Grant Hill, winning 2 national titles there. So anyway, this is a calm now until I guess it gets going again against South Sudan and see who doesn't play. It's an embarrassment of riches that Steve Kerr has. And you're keeping an NBA champion on the bench so that somebody else could come off and have a performance that you had to see to believe. I mean, Durant yesterday was just absolutely terrific against Serbia. We'll get to more on that coming up, but you may have heard that the deal looks like it's all done, that the TNT is going to have the NBA rights for 1 more year, and then everything shifts to Amazon. They're going to fight this out in court. TNT, or the parent company, Warner Brothers, is claiming that they had the right to match. It doesn't look promising right now, and it also leads to the question of the future of Charles Barkley, who not only discussed that with Dan Patrick on Friday, but told you exactly how much money he makes. Even athletes where the numbers are reported, you don't hear them saying how much they make per year. Charles Barkley tells Dan Patrick exactly what he makes. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Commanders on the practice field in pads today. We'll have some weekend reaction from some of what went on there and some of the comments that Marcus Mariota made about the quarterback competition. And observers are saying that Mariota is getting a significant number of the first-team snaps. Doesn't mean that Jaden Daniels won't be the starter on opening day, but they have not yet named him the starter. They would, I'm sure, like it to move in that direction, but if he's not ready, they're not going to rush this. This is, they hope, a generational quarterback, and if it takes a while, so be it. Jordan Love just got his money from the Packers. He looks like he's the third in line of a great plan of succession, where you had Brett Favre for 20 years, Aaron Rodgers sits for 3, he takes over for 15 or 16, Love sits for 3, and boom. I'm not saying that Jaden Daniels is going to sit for 3. That's not going to happen. But if he sits for a while, not so terrible. We'll get to that. Meantime, the changing face of sports television and how it's working. It's funny when you think back of the way it was when we only had 4 channels and 3 networks. And, the way they divided up the television rights, it was based on number of people watching, how much they paid in rights, and, what they were able to sell the commercials for, and that was the whole ball game. And then cable TV comes along, and ESPN starts to become a force in the late 80s. You remember, in the early 80s, they were on shaky ground. It wasn't until they made a deal to pick up the second half of the NFL season for just Thursday nights. That's really what launched them. That's what made them a big deal. And when you had NFL rights, you could get it in money in both ways. You got more cable subscribers. Now they got to get their NFL fix on a Thursday night, so you got more people wanting to get cable TV, and ESPN, which was charging the cable carriers more money for their product. And you also had the double dipping to get the advertising. So that was changing the game, and it was changing it in a big way for the networks as well. And, of course, when Fox bid like twice what CBS did to get the NFC rights in 1993, that was a game changer as well, and it helped them to launch an entire network. Their motive for overpaying for the NFL was to get their network off the ground, and it worked. Used to be just the network of The Simpsons, and then it became a major television network thanks to the NFL. And so now we're moving into a new era where streaming is clearly going to be the future, and cable TV is disintegrating. It's not completely dead, but they note that there are 40 million fewer cable subscribers than in 2011. So in 13 years, the cable market has dropped significantly, and it's moving towards streaming, which leads us to what happened with the Amazon deal, not just for the NFL, which has proven to be incredible for them, that they had viewership up 20% from last year. It's not the viewership that they were getting on Fox when they did Thursday Night Football, but they're getting more and more viewers. And here's the big thing about this. ESPN, when they wanted NFL rights, they wanted it mainly to get more cable subscribers. It wasn't necessarily based on ratings, although the ratings that came along with it enabled them to sell the advertising. Amazon's model is totally different here. They're looking for more people to be prime customers and shop online. And so when they get new signups like me that need Thursday Night Football, they're getting more signups. And according to this report in the Washington Post, Prime Video received around 100,000 new signups at its peak day leading into the first exclusive NFL game. As soon as people knew, Thursday Night Football is going to be on Amazon, better sign up, 100,000 people. That's big for them because not just viewers, which they could sell advertising for, but 100,000 more people roaming around the stores. I was looking for a comp, and this is what I came up with. I don't know if this is apples to apples, but you may have heard of the Stop Buc-ee's, the roadside Stop Buc-ee's, which has 130 gas pumps. So they want people to come in for gas, but it's like a mall inside. They have various stores. They have a place where you can get your hair done. They have some of the best, I'm told, barbecue sandwiches that can be found. They have several restaurants in there. So they're getting you in there to buy gas, but while you're there, you're going to spend a lot of money. Well, this is the Amazon model. This is how they're doing it. So while they get, the rights and they're paying for it, they're going to pay $1.8 billion to get these NBA rights for 11 years. And I'm sorry, they're going to pay $20 billion over 11 years for the WNBA and the NBA, including 6 NBA conference finals. I mean, this is a whole new world. If you want to watch the conference finals, you're going to, after next year, after the TNT deal runs out, you're going to have Amazon. So this is a whole different thing. Another comp I was thinking about, I see this on diners, drive-ins, and dives. Like some guy has a gas station, and he puts a barbecue or taco food truck in the back, and before long, his tacos and barbecue are selling huge, and it becomes more of a restaurant than a gas station. That's kind of what they're doing here. They're getting you in there with the TV sports, but it's also a way of getting more people to go online shopping, which is where they really make their money. That's their core business. And so that's why. And also the NBA is their forward thinking. They're looking not at 2 years down the road, but they're looking at 5 and 6 years down the road, where if it's down, cable subscribers are down 40 million now, what's it going to be, in 2 or 3 years? $80 million. And so that is a huge part of all of this and how they think about their success. And that's why we're going to see this. I mean, as they note, CBS without the NFL is zero, said Rich Greenfield, founder of Lightshed Partners, a media venture fund. Amazon without the NFL is fine. That's a scary place to be. And they just have so much money. They're even talking about
absorbing these regional cable networks that have failed with baseball, Diamond Sports. They'll take those on Amazon too, and they'll get more people subscribing who want to watch baseball. So now we have the Charles Barkley question. Barkley, it looks like, and who knows how this is going to play out in court, but more than likely, the rights are going to wind up with Amazon, and Warner Brothers is going to be told, sorry, that's the way this worked. We didn't allow you to match, and you're just going to have to move on after next season. Then what becomes of Barkley? He was on Dan Patrick Friday, asked, how did it get to this?
Money. The money's just gotten so astronomical, and the owners they need this money to pay these players, and the fans are the big loser, but they need this money to pay the players. Dan, I was telling some friends of mine, you know how old I am? I remember the first time an NBA player made $1 million, we were going around the locker room high-fiving each other. And I'm talking like, I'm in the locker room with Dr. J, Moses, Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney, Clement Johnson, all these guys. We can't, and this was like 86, 87, I think. The first time an NBA player made $1 million. We were high, they're like, we can't believe it. And now $1 million, that's per diem.
Your boss at TNT probably didn't help the cause when he said that we don't need the NBA. So I wonder what the priority was with the NBA. Like, we want it, but we want it at a certain price.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that, to be honest with you. Did that have something to do with it? Not really, because we did say we would match. So yeah, but they didn't give us an opportunity. What I really think happened was, because they bought in another partner, this was a last-ditch cash grab by the NBA and the players. That's why I think they signed an 11-year deal. So they're like, hey, let's get as much money as we possibly can right now. This is going to be our last bite of the apple, because TNT, ABC, ESPN, they're not going to pay more money going forward. That's why I think they're like, hey, you know what? Let's get in bed. And I'm not blaming, because I love Adam. Hey, let's get in bed with the streaming, because they're going to be the only people who can afford us in 11 years. That's just my honest opinion.
All right, so what are you going to do when this upcoming season is over?
My intention right now is to retire. So, Dan, I've never said this before, and I'll share it with you because I got a lot of love for you. So my deal, there's been a lot of numbers thrown around about my deal, which I always find fascinating, but I've never told people exactly what my deal was. So my deal is 10 years, $210 million. Next year will be year 3. Turner has to come to me today or next week and say, hey, we screwed up. Will you take a pay cut? So they either gonna have to guarantee the whole 10 years, 210, or they're gonna have to ask me to take a pay cut, which under no circumstances am I taking a pay cut. 0 chances of me taking a pay cut. So then I'm gonna politely decline taking a pay cut, because TNT's been great to me. And they're gonna have to say, we're gonna guarantee the whole 210, or Charles Wade Barkley's gonna be a free agent after next year. So it's gonna be a very interesting next few days, but that's the way I structured my contract. They wanted me, I was like, wait, if y'all lose the NBA, why should I get screwed? I said, they're like, well, let's come to some type of agreement. I said, the agreement is, or we get to make you an offer. I said, that's fine. I'm going to turn it down, because I'm not taking no pay cut because y'all screwed up. And so that's where we're at, Dan. So apparently, unless they, like I say, they can, but I don't see them guaranteeing it, to be honest, because they don't really have anything. So I think I'm going to be a free agent next summer, and I'm going to have to sit back and, like I say, right now, I'm not trying to be this or this or this. Right now, my intention is to retire, because then, I mean, you've done it quite a few times, in fairness, went to another network, started over. I'm not sure. I love TNT so much and the people here. I don't know if I want to go to another network. Like I'll never say never, but right now my intention is to stay to last and go out with a bang. We're gonna give everything we got next year because out of loyalty to the NBA and their fans. And I want to say to some of all the fans out there, man, you guys been great. You guys been great to me. When I was in Tahoe a couple of weeks ago, everybody's saying, guys, don't go. I said, dude, we don't want to go, but we're going. First of all, let me say this. This is like the worst kept secret in the history of sports broadcasting. Like, we knew we were done like 5-6 months ago. They're like, well, we're still alive. We're still alive. I'm like, yo, man, please stop lying to us. We know it's over. Just go ahead and announce it. So there is a sense of relief, to be honest with you, to the employees. Because I've been spending a lot of time with the employees lately, and they just wanted it to be over because they got to start planning for their future.
Yeah, but why can't you guys still do your show? If I'm Amazon, why wouldn't Amazon say, why don't we capitalize on the best, pregame show that there is out there and bring you guys in, keep everybody in Atlanta, keep all the producers, and you guys, just produce your show?
Well, first of all, you have to ask Ernie that because Ernie is the guy who probably would never leave Turner. But Dan, everything's on the table.
Has somebody spoken to Amazon?
I have spoken to all 3 networks.
So you spoke to Amazon?
I have spoke to all 3 networks.
So you spoke to Amazon?
I have spoke to all 3 networks, Dan, who got the NBA going forward.
I know Amazon is where you can
Let me
go.
say this. I have spoken for the last 3 months. I've spoken to all the networks.
That doesn't sound like somebody who's going to retire.
Well, Dan, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen. I mean, first of all, I'd be stupid not to take their call. But the beauty of this situation, I don't have to make any decisions for a year, Dan. But I told all 3 networks, hey, I'm honored, I'm flattered that y'all want to talk to me, but let's see what happens in a year. So that's the great thing about it from my perspective. I don't have to make any decisions for a year. But like I say, my intention, I'm not trying to play hardball. I'm not trying to get attention. My intention right now is to retire. Like I say, Ernie would never go to another network. I have not talked to Kenny and Shaq, but I have listened to everybody. And like I say, I got a year, Dan. I ain't got to worry about this. All this stuff is just noise for a year, to be honest with you.
Okay, would you go someplace without Ernie or without, let's say, Shaq and Kenny? Let's say Ernie is not leaving, staying TNT Atlanta. Would you, on your own, go to another network to be part of their NBA broadcast?
I'm not frozen. I'm thinking. That's a great question, Dan. I don't know how to answer that question. I ain't gonna never lie to you. I don't know how to answer that question right now because I don't know. First of all, I don't know who's got what going forward. Like when I had these conversations with these companies, they're like, we're finalizing what we're going to have.
Okay.
So I would have to sit back. Hey, ESPN, tell me what you guys got and what you want me to do. Amazon, tell me what you got and what you want me to do. NBC, tell me what you got and what you want me to do. Until they finalize what they got, because there was rumors when we were like, we're going to lose the conference. Even if we retain the NBA, we're going to lose a day of the week. We're going to lose the conference finals every other year. So when I talk to these companies, I says, get back to me when you know what you got.
All right, couple of takeaways here from Charles Barkley with Dan Patrick. Number one, Patrick's right. Ain't no way he's going to retire after one more year at Turner. Number two, he told Dan what he makes. Now remember this, Barkley kind of negotiated with Dan Patrick and I guess others when he was being courted by the Live Tour. Remember the Live Tour wanted to get him on there, a part of their TV coverage, which I guess is still on the CW. I don't know what kind of ratings they're getting, but they thought that he would beef it up. They did hire David Faraday, who said he wouldn't go there, but he went there. Everybody's got their price. And Barkley essentially said he's got his price too. And I believe he said, I don't remember exactly what the number was, but he was looking for 3 times what he was making. Well, I believe he's making 10. So he got TNT to up his salary to $21 million, and he says he's got 10 years left on the deal. So they owe him $210 million with no NBA, it looks like. This deal is probably going to wind up in the hands of Amazon the way it's going. And he's even saying, we know it's over. He's not helping them any. Also, here's a couple of other things that are important to note here. Amazon is valued at $2 trillion. Warner Brothers, the parent company of Turner, $20 billion. $20 billion as compared to $2 trillion. I don't know how to make the conversion, but any number that starts with trillion or a T is a lot of money. So they got the money to do this. And here's how quickly the landscape has changed on this as well, as noted in this Post story over the weekend. Amazon offered more money than NBC for the Big Ten Saturday Night Football package in 2022. That's only 2 years ago. The conference chose NBC instead, in part because university presidents were concerned about fans finding the games on a streaming platform. But that fall, Amazon quieted any doubts when it debuted the exclusive Thursday Night Football broadcast after shelling out about $1 billion a year for the rights. And look, that's mainstream now. We've had 2 years of it, and most people will say, yeah, we've gotten used to watching the games on Amazon on Thursday night. Look how quickly that has changed, and look how quickly things are going to change as we move forward. So that's kind of a gauge there. The university presidents just 2 years ago, I don't know, streaming, maybe we're better off with a network. Okay, we'll take less money to go to NBC. And now I think if they had that decision now, they would go with Amazon. And Amazon, again, they got the cash. They got the money. $2 trillion as compared to $20 billion. And again, that quote from Rich Greenfield, who's the founder of Lightshed Partners, a media venture fund, CBS without the NFL is zero. Amazon without the NFL is fine. That's a scary place to be. So that's where things are going as we close out 2024 and head quickly to 2025. Unbelievable. Anyway, next hour, more on the Commanders and the views of what's been going on last couple of days. Fans allowed to go. 3,000 showed up. We'll talk about that and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, we roll into hour 2 and spend some more time on the football team. We yacked a lot about the Olympic basketball in the first hour. Charles Barkley and his television deal. Barkley, by the way, saying, you didn't hear this? He told Dan Patrick what he makes. He's got a 10-year deal with TNT for $210 million, $21 million a year, and it looks like TNT will have the NBA for only one more year. So what are you going to do with Barkley? I mean, it says in his contract specifically he's doing NBA pre- and post-game shows, which are not going to be on the network, and he says if they come to him with a pay cut, he's going to say, no, not a dime. And look, everybody's going to be lining up to hire Charles Barkley. That's a foregone conclusion. And this nonsense about him retiring, forget it. Forget about it. Ain't going to happen. So we got fans out at Commanders practice. Now, they only have 5 available dates. I think they're all this week. Started yesterday. The team is going to be practicing against the Jets next week, and then they have an exhibition game on the 10th. That'll be the first of 3. And it's, I don't know, I think there's a number of factors that went into this, including the fact that they're just having to fix up the facility. It's a mess. Dan Snyder left it in a terrible spot. They just took out an artificial turf field that had been there for 30 years and hadn't been used because they don't have those kind of fields in the NFL anymore. And that's where they used to set up a lot of the media stuff during training camp. I remember we did shows out there for years. And Steve Zabin would kick field goals during commercials. And, it was just an outdated mess. So they removed that. But I think because of all the renovations, that's the reason for it. Maybe at some point they'll take training camp to another place, as it was many years in Carlisle. And I don't remember exactly how they used to do it for fans there. It seemed like you could just kind of show up. because there wasn't any tickets. There was no internet, so you couldn't register online. Well, things have changed now. So if you wanted to be one of the people who was watching training camp yesterday, you had to be there. You had to be online and order a ticket to do it. That was the only way, and they're not charging anymore. That lesson was learned by Dan Snyder in 2000 when he was charging people to get in, thinking he was going to make a killing. And the way the rules work in the NFL, if a scout from another team wanted to pay his way in to watch practice, he could do it. When you're letting fans in for free, you can keep them out. And so scouts were coming from other teams. They knew it, and there were certain things that they couldn't practice. Mark Carrier, who was on that team, said, yeah, we couldn't practice things. That's why we got off to kind of a slow start defensively when the season started, because we weren't able to practice things on the field. I mean, it was just such a circus. So now they do allow you in. They don't charge you, but you got to register online to do it, and they're holding a padded practice today, and the fans are out on the field. This was yesterday, and it's part of the NFL tour. The NFL Network always sends people around to watch the various training camps. I think Ron Rivera is starting to do that now for the NFL Network. He's part of that Good Morning Football show. Did not land a coaching job, tried to become a defensive coordinator in a couple of places, and I guess he had a tryout with ESPN. He didn't get a job there, but now he's with the NFL Network, so he's doing that. So is Scott Pioli, longtime executive in the league. As a matter of fact, he's married to Bill Parcells' daughter, whose name is Dallas, which is kind of an interesting twist. And so he's part of the mishpucha there with the Parcells, and knows the league inside and out, and has had a number of executive positions. And he was out at Commanders practice yesterday along with Steve Weish, who's been with the NFL Network for a long time. Weish at one point was with the Washington Post. I believe he covered the Wizards. I think he did. I'm not sure. But he's a long time. He went to Atlanta Journal-Constitution, has been with the NFL Network maybe 20 years. I don't know. But they were out there yesterday watching the practice, and these were the observations. Steve Weish with Scott Pioli.
Jayden Daniels, the rookie quarterback. We saw him rotate in sometimes, mostly with the twos behind Marcus Mariota, but sometimes with the one personnel. Just your thoughts on what you saw out of him.
You know, I think we saw some good and we saw some not so good. I don't think we saw any bad.
Right.
You know, we saw there was a little bit of a center quarterback exchange issue when he had to go under at the first snap, as we saw. But, you know, again, to me, I think when we evaluate young quarterbacks, we used to have this saying, hey, just get the guys in the huddle, get the play called, get the guys out of the huddle, and get the snap off. And that, it seems like such a simple thing, but young quarterbacks being able to learn how to make sure that there aren't any pre-snap issues, that's a big thing. So I saw some good things out of Jayden.
Yeah.
You could see the guys responding to him as well, right?
Right, and we've heard that, you know, he's checked at line of scrimmage. He's checked into some situations to really take advantage of the defense. We also saw him under center, in the pistol, in shotgun, on the move, doing dropbacks. So they're really putting him through it. But again, Marcus Mariota, for now, is taking the majority of the number one snaps. I want to talk to you about their new head coach, Dan Quinn, though. You were with him for 5 years in Atlanta, where you were the assistant general manager there. He was the head coach. Buy-in, buy-in, buy-in. That's all we're hearing from people here, that people are buying in. What does he have that makes it work?
And I'm not a big fan of the word authenticity, but Dan is authentic through and through and through. As we talked to a couple of coaches who were with him the first time, they said, come on, this can't be for real. He is for real. It's everyday energy. It's honesty. And players know when they're being, or when they're not being told the truth.
Right.
And Dan is all day honest. He's got this energy that's unending. He's got this positivity. And I remember, you know, being with Dan, one of the things that was talked about was being positive all the time while also still being able to tell the truth. That's where it gets a little mucky sometimes. But Dan has an ability to also tell the truth that isn't very positive sometimes, but he keeps it upbeat. And you could see and sense that the players love that about him.
That's Scott Pioli, former GM in the league, a couple of teams, Atlanta, also Steve Weish with the NFL Network. Interesting, Weish said that Mariota, for now, is taking the majority of the snaps. In about 15 minutes, we'll get to some of the comments from Marcus Mariota and Jayden Daniels over the weekend. So that, you know, that's the number one story for sure in camp, is how soon is Jayden Daniels going to play. But there's some other developing stories, including, it looks like, the need for a kicker. And I think what they're waiting for is to see kickers that are cut from other teams. But they've got a UFL kicker named Ramiz Ahmad, who is in camp. And the reason for that is Brandon McManus, who they had signed in the offseason, they had to release him when he was sued in civil court by 2 flight attendants who say that he sexually harassed them on a flight to London last year. And given this team, there's no way they could do that. So that's one thing to keep an eye on is kickers that are going to be coming in to compete for the job. Also, there was the governor of Maryland there in a Sean Taylor jersey, the new uniforms with which Taylor never wore, and number 21 on it, whatever. He was out there, and he talked about, the idea that maybe they can stay in Maryland. I don't think that's what anybody wants. People like Wes Moore, the governor, done a good job, but that's something that they hope it doesn't come to, but could come to. It could actually happen, and the question is, how close can it be built to the Morgan Boulevard metro station, making things easier? But I think that would be far down the list of options for the team. The main goal, I think, is to get them back in D.C. on the RFK site, and we'll see how that develops. Meantime, the fan part of this, and this was the first day, as I say, that fans were allowed to come out there and watch practice as they were able to register online. And Dan Quinn, who's part of the new enthusiasm, getting everybody fired up. They did have it last year when Ron Rivera ran his last camp, but that was because there was new ownership. The ownership was approved just before the start of camp. I think it was July 23rd, and they opened camp like 3 days later, and people were very enthused that there was no more Dan Snyder. Now there's a new coach, new quarterback, whole new era. And Quinn was asked about, preparing his team to play and also connecting with the fan base and how he views it.
Leads to me growing up, on the East Coast. And so, seeing the games of Washington and New York and Philadelphia and Dallas, and those were the ones that, when John Madden and Pat Summerall were calling a game, that was the ones that were on. So, and then, going to college locally here. So growing up and where I, fell in love with football, you recognized, what that was here. And, I can still remember even, telling, Mr. Jones when I left, Dallas, and he said, that's such an important fan base, Dan, that you're the right man for that. And so I appreciated that. This is from a competitor who knew the importance of this franchise, this city, and he had saw that connection firsthand. So, it's really cool to be a part of.
Is there things that you can do as a coach or as a team to help rebuild the fan base other than win?
It's a good question. It certainly helps. More than anything, I think you want to recognize they're part of what we do and how we play. And so knowing that, creating home field advantage and that kind of support, that's part of winning. And so when teams have to come here to play, that's a hard place to go play. It's the team, it's the fan base, it's everything that goes into it. So yes, the staff and the team can affect that, knowing how important they are to create an environment here when teams come to play. Hey man, this is going to be a hard day. It's the team, it's the fan base, it's the noise, it's all of that wrapped into competing. And the more our fans live that and understand that, it'll help the on-field performance. So yeah, we're calling on that in a big way.
Just to that point, I mean, today might be kind of the first day where there's a ton of fans, but how has your interaction with fans been, just grocery store or restaurants, whatever?
Yeah, it's been very cool to see, a support. We're pumped you're here. We're glad, that this thing, go get them, that kind of stuff. So seeing that, when you're part of the community, it feels good, because usually when you're in the office and you're just here at home, you don't feel it on a regular basis. So being out and seeing some people and feeling that support, it's really a cool thing.
That's Dan Quinn before practice yesterday. They went out on the field. They had their workout. He addressed the fan base and thanked them for coming out. And then they're back out on the field today in pads. I think of Joe Gibbs, and as much of an X's and O's guy as he was, sleeping in his office, watching the film, he courted the fan base. That was part of his deal. How much the fans played a part in the great success that he had with 4 Super Bowl appearances in 9 years. I don't know, but he went out of his way to say, hey,
we're going to need all of our – not that they had trouble filling the place because all the tickets were sold. They were all season tickets. And during the glory days, they would have like 3 no-shows. You know, somebody got sick at the last minute or whatever. But the place was packed, and it was packed with everybody wearing burgundy and gold and rooting for the team. And he would say, we need them all out. Oh, we got a tough game. I know Houston is 1-6, but we got to have everybody out there or we're not going to have it. You know, he went out of his way for that. Quinn's a little different personality. He's not going to do that, but, you know, he's understanding what the fan base means here, and he'll pick up more and more of it. And again, I don't think he wants to admit that he was a Giants fan growing up. You know, maybe at some point he will, but he's from Morristown, New Jersey. He graduated high school in 1989. That was in the thick of the glory days. And he went to Salisbury in 89. They were still good. They won a Super Bowl while he was in college, just a stone's throw away. So, you know, he gets it. He gets what the rivalry is all about with NFC East teams, Giants, Cowboys, Eagles, the whole thing. And good that he grew up with that kind of a background. One other fan story, and this was in the Post today in the style section by Annie Gowan, about the new generation of Chiefs fans, young girls who are showing up in training camp knowing they're not going to see Taylor Swift, but they want to get a view of Taylor Swift's boyfriend. And as she notes in the story, they're training at St. Joseph's, which is Missouri Western University, small college in St. Joseph, Missouri. And they had little girls clutching 87 jerseys, tiny footballs, Swift merchandise. Some had come from far away, like Hannah Calhoun, who traveled with her parents more than 600 miles from Lexington, Kentucky. The 16-year-old was wearing a T-shirt that read, "Who's Travis Kelce anyway?" And then you know, a couple of them said, "Well, do you think they're going to get married?" Now, this only, you know, remember, this was a year ago. This wasn't a thing. That last year, Travis complained to his brother Jason on the New Heights podcast that Swift had shot him down. He said he was, quote, butthurt that Swift wouldn't see him after her recent Kansas City show. He was getting the word out there through the podcast, and he had made a bracelet he wanted to give her, and it had his phone number on it. 6 weeks later, the couple made their budding relationship public when Swift appeared with the Kelce family at the suite at Arrowhead Stadium. After the game, they hopped into his Chevelle convertible and headed off into the sunset. It's a little girl, a 9-year-old girl, Grace Clark from Missouri, who was attending camp for the first time with her family, and asked, did they already get married? She's a famous football player. She's a famous singer. He's a famous football player. It just works. Like she's got it all figured out at the age of 9. There was another girl, 11-year-old Molly Chambers, who said, Travis, do it for your girlfriend. And she was holding a Chiefs flag and a Taylor Swift picture book in her hand. So this is just gold for the NFL. This is a fan base that didn't exist before, and all these Swifties are showing up at training. I don't know if there are any Swifties out in Ashburn, because I don't think we have any connections of players here to Taylor Swift, but that's just an interesting little angle on that. One other thing from Quinn yesterday, and this is about, and it always happens in training camp. I don't know how he's going to avoid this, but guys get hot. They get bothered. This happened when you have these cross-team practices. Remember, they were doing Hard Knocks. Was it the Dolphins some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago? I think they were still the Redskins at that point. And a couple of players got into it on the field. Training camp fights, coaches kind of view them like, hey, stop that. But they're like, wink, wink to the assistants. We like the intensity. This is the public stance from Dan Quinn on training camp fights.
The animosity and fighting is not going to be part of what we do. Championship teams figured out they don't have ways that, get sideways and doing that. So it won't be part of what we do. If you lose your poise, in a game, there's consequences. If you lose your poise at practice, there'll be consequences. But no, it's nothing that I've had to address yet. I did early in the OTAs to make sure that didn't get that way.
Well, we'll see what the consequences are. I can't imagine they're severe, because coaches like that. They like the intensity. There's that double thing there. Well, no, don't do that. And hey, look at that guy. He's really getting after it. That's a guy we should look at on the team. So there's that. All right, the quarterbacks talk. Marcus Mariota yesterday, Jaden Daniels the year before. It's a quarterback battle to some degree, but it's an interesting kind of quarterback battle. And it's between two guys, each of them Heisman Trophy winners, each of them the second pick of the draft.
One has been through the ringer to get to this point, and one is just launching on his journey. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I got a Tony show today coming up at 11 o'clock, 94 degrees. Okay, not quite as hot as it was a couple of weeks ago, but hot, hotter than I would like it to be. In about 20 minutes, we'll get to what happened 38 years ago today when the USFL actually beat the NFL in court, but was awarded $1, a Pyrrhic victory if there ever was one. And we'll talk about that coming up in about 20 minutes. Meantime, training camp rolls on for the Commanders in Ashburn. And it's funny when you look at this quarterback battle. I remember this when Jim Hart came to the Redskins for his final year. Jim Hart was 40 years old. This was the 1984 season. So the Redskins had been to back-to-back Super Bowls. They'd beaten Miami in Super Bowl 17. They get back, and they get clobbered by the Raiders in Tampa. And while they're down there getting ready for the game, Jim Hart is out of a job. His contract is ended with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's approaching 40 years old, and he's doing some TV work for a St. Louis station covering the Super Bowl. And he and Joe Gibbs knew each other because Gibbs had been an assistant with Don Coryell when Hart was playing earlier in his career with the Cardinals. In fact, they had maybe their best year in 1975 when they won the division. He was a really solid quarterback, probably along the lines of like a Kirk Cousins, not at the elite level, not a Hall of Fame quarterback, but a really good quarterback, and played forever with the St. Louis Cardinals. So in 1981, they had drafted Neil Lomax in the first round. He had played at Portland State, one of these guys that, just kind of outkicked the coverage, if you wanted to put it that way. He'd gone to a school which was probably too small for him, but they ran the run-and-shoot offense there with Mouse Davis. Remember, he was famous for that, and he put up some incredible numbers while he was there. And so, they transitioned to, in those days, wasn't a big deal to have a first-round draft pick sit for a while. But Lomax won the job, and Hart stayed on as his backup. In those days, you couldn't really outprice yourself. He was making whatever he's making, probably a couple $100,000 a year as the backup quarterback, and then they just finally decided to discard him. And when he came here, I asked him if he had been something of a mentor to Lomax, and he said, well, I wanted to, but he didn't want me to be the mentor. They was looking at it like competition. Well, things are really different now. So the Commanders, they're going to, I think they signed him before the draft, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, free agency was before the draft. So they or I think so. Yeah, it starts in March, right. So they had signed Marcus Mariota. Everybody knew that they weren't going to go through the season with Marcus Mariota as their starting quarterback, and it was pretty certain that they were going to take Jaden Daniels. And when he came in, they asked him, well, you've been a starting quarterback in this league before. You're the number 2 draft pick. You won a Heisman Trophy. I mean, it looks like they're going to take a quarterback here, and this isn't going to be a long-term stay for you, but not in those words, but kind of like that. And he said, well, I'm ready for any role that they have for me. And because these guys have already made a lot of money, and because they get still, I think he's got like a $10 million, $8 million, $10 million, whatever it is, he's got making plenty of money as a backup quarterback. It doesn't matter as much. It used to be, you have to become a starting quarterback so you can make a lot of money. And the veteran guys would fight these young guys off. Like Billy Kilmer hated Joe Theismann because Theismann was going after his job even when Kilmer was up there in his late 30s. That's just the way things work. But now it's more of a, like a mentoring role. And if you prove yourself and you can still play, you'll get a shot someplace else next year. It's just so different than it used to be. And the money's just completely insane. Tua Tagovailoa has just signed a contract extension with the Dolphins that will pay him, on average, about $53 million a year. Dan Marino, who came to the Dolphins in 1983, and I believe his last year was 2000, so that's 18 years. 18 years with the Miami Dolphins. Total salary in those 18 years, $51 million. Tua Tagovailoa, $53 million for 1 year. I know it's a different era, it's different times, but that's where the money is, and that's why you can look at somebody like Marcus Mariota, who's going to be quite comfortable. Yeah, sure, he wants to play. He's a competitor, but not desperate to play. You know what I mean? Like, he's made money as a starting quarterback and is making really good money as a backup quarterback. And it's kind of like, we'll see how it goes. But he knows the role is to play until he's not needed to play anymore, until Daniels is ready. And along the way, has to help Daniels get ready to play. And this is what he said about how Daniels has leaned on him so far as a rookie coming into the league.
Plenty, and that's what's really been cool for me, is to have that dialogue. Because I think when you have a guy that's willing to learn, that wants to absorb as much knowledge as he can, I think that really makes the whole room better. For Jayden, he's a young guy, but we got to do it as a part of our group. We have to kind of create these scenarios and these experiences for him. That way, when he gets into the game, it's not something that's brand new. So I think he's done a great job of asking questions, and we can also always just kind of keep bringing him along.
Yeah, you think Joe Theismann ever asked Billy Kilmer a question, or the 1 year he played with Sonny asked him a question? If he did, they would have gone, figure it out, kid. Yeah. So there's that. And as far as advice, I mean, who better really to give out the advice? Mariota, who was the number 2 pick of the draft, Heisman Trophy winner, and became a starter right away with Tennessee, and things, kind of went downhill. He did start, it's only 2 years ago he started 12 games for the Falcons. It's not like he's been, in oblivion for this period of time. He didn't play much last year in Philadelphia, but he has played in the league. As far as the advice that he would give Daniels about the journey that he's been on, this was the big piece that he said he would give him.
When you're a young guy, you really want to try to come in and be perfect, and I think that's hard, and I really think that can be detrimental in some sense to your growth. I really think you have to come out here, you're going to fail, you're going to have mistakes, and what you have to be able to do is to learn from those things. And I think he's got such a great mindset in that sort of space where he's just like, you know what, regardless of how this play results, I'm going to do my best to put our guys in situations that will be successful and just go out there and play. And when he's able to do that, I think that ultimately will kind of showcase his abilities and how good of a player he can be.
Is that about not, maybe taking a chance with the ball? Is that kind of what you're talking about? What are in terms of making mistakes?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that. It's maybe getting into a check or getting out of a bad play. So there's several instances where that may come up. I think for me personally, when I was a young player, I was just trying to be perfect, have the perfect feet, and you kind of lose that sense of playing the position and just being instinctual. So I think for us, we're just trying to help him kind of, hey, just be an instinctive player that you've been, but here's kind of what we want, kind of the guidelines that we want you to follow so you can go out there and be successful.
Now, the question of when does Jayden Daniels play? You heard Steve Weish say on the NFL Network coverage yesterday and observing the practice that Mariota was getting most of the first-team snaps. Not that Daniels won't be ready to start the opener on September 8th against Tampa Bay, but there is that process that they go through. And so you get to the question of, does it make sense to start the rookie in game one, or do you play him when he's ready to go? And Mariota, having been through this is what he says, and it would seem to be something that he might not want to say because, maybe he wants to start the season, and hell, if he plays great, you're not going to take him out, right? I mean, if Marcus Mariota comes in and is lighting up the league, is throwing 3 touchdown passes a game to Terry McLaurin, I mean, that's not going to happen. But if he does that, he holds on to the job. Opportunities are hard to find in the NFL. There's only 32 starting jobs. So the question, when do you start Jayden Daniels? Here, he kind of makes, he makes the case. Might be the best idea to start him in game one.
I felt pretty comfortable right away. For me personally, probably my best 2 years of my career, my first couple. So I was lucky to have a good quarterback room. I had a vet in Charlie Whitehurst and Zach Mendenberger who really took care of me. And then my second year with Matt Castle and Alex Tanning, when you have a quarterback room that's really focused on helping the young guy, you can't take anything away from that. It's really special. So I was very fortunate early on in my career to have that. And, we're trying to create that type of atmosphere here for Jaden.
And that is obviously the goal, too. He's the second pick of the draft. You want him on the field sooner rather than later. But Daniels, and he said all the right things about this, and I do believe him, he's fine if he has to compete for the job.
I like competing. I'm a competitor, so regardless if I was announced to starter or not, you still got to compete. You still can't be content of your job, comfortable. I think it's just your job and still the deal. You got to go out there and compete. So for me, it's not a problem at all. I like competing. That's up to DQ and AP for the decisions and stuff like that. But for me, I can control how hard I go out there and practice and how I compete.
That's what you'd want him to say, right? That's and that's an important point. Even if I have the job, I have to compete to keep the job. So he's got the right attitude about that. As far as leadership, and players have raved about this, that he hasn't come in as being entitled. I feel like, maybe I'm being unfair to Robert Griffin because everybody loved him as a rookie and was saying all the right things, it seemed. But you see a different approach here from Daniels and the sense of entitlement of being the number 2 pick of the draft. Some might say, well, he didn't make a big stink about this, but they gave him number 5, and Tress Way has been the longest-serving veteran on the team. He's been there 10 years, and they forced him to give up number 5 so they could give it to the rookie. Okay, you could look at it that way. But overall, you've heard various teammates say, Sam Cosmi said this last week, that he doesn't walk in like he's entitled. He wants to be part of the team, and this is what he said in discussing about leadership.
It's not just about me or about Terry or about anybody. If we want to be successful as a team, everybody has to be as one. And just showcasing that, you got guys that have been proven in this league that could come out there and essentially say, I'm better than team, but they're not. So if the veteran leadership that we have isn't doing that, so why do I have the right? Why do I feel like I have the right to do it? So but that's just me. I'm never gonna put myself out there in the spotlight to think I'm bigger than anybody, better than anybody. Everybody's equal on the field, and you gotta go out there and compete and show it each and every day, and that's what DQ preaches.
Yeah, maturity there. He's 5 years in college, 2 different schools. He said that he did have to compete for the starting job when he got to LSU. So he's got a different perspective, and it seems good. We'll see as time goes on and how much he's going to play in the preseason. I imagine he'll get, maybe a quarter in the first game, a half in the second, and then they'll make a decision. It's September 8th, so we got, 5, almost 6 weeks before the start of the regular season. All right, that does it for me. Tony is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.